Hi everyone, Mindrolling. I'm back. It's Raghu with old-time buddy David, Nichtern David. Glad to see you.
Good to see you, Raghu.
Yeah, it's my chance. It's our chance to hang out because we were just talking about David's going off for 7 weeks to the Orient, and I'm going off for a few weeks, and then we're going to meet back again in Maui. David, as many of you know, he's a man, a Renaissance man. But he is known for producing Krishnadas records and playing beautiful guitar with him in his kirtan concerts. He is also known for writing a terrific book, which we discussed last year, David and I, Awakening from the Daydream, which we're going to talk about, not the book in particular, but it'll have stuff from the book because I'm interested in a couple of things that certainly relate. And of course, David has been a music producer as well and worked with a host of incredible people. So I'm always glad to hang out with you, Dave.
Yeah, we have to figure out a way to hang out when we're not doing this too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Have go for the deep hang.
yes.
Yeah.
So I've become very interested in a couple of topics. I briefly mentioned them to you when we spoke about doing this, but our mutual friend, Sharon Salzberg, when she was asked by our mutual friend, Duncan Trussell, and I've done a bunch of these podcasts around this subject, so people are probably getting bored of me telling this story, but not everybody knows it. And he said, well, what do you do with your practice, Sharon? You know, and she...
You almost can do Duncan now, right? You can
Yeah,
almost do
right.
him. Right?
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she said, I get up, I sit down on the mat, and I get real, Duncan. And he went,
Oh my God.
exactly. He went, what? What? He was hoping for, I sit and I follow my breath and blah, blah, blah. So that became a theme for us that turned into getting real. Okay. What are all the aspects of getting real? Of course, being able to see the difference between actual experience and projected experience, of the story we tell ourselves, the narratives that go on in our head when we sit on that mat. And so I have been talking to various of our friends about this to illuminate what it is that we can be aware of when, in terms of quote unquote getting real. So one of the things that struck me, that there's one teacher, beyond a teacher, that I love more than anybody, especially around this concept, although, he would never talk about it in these terms, but he is the realest teacher that I have ever... I unfortunately never met him, and I'm talking about Dilgo Kyhentse Rinpoche. I don't know. Did you ever meet Dilgo Kyhentse Rinpoche?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Oh, see, I feel bereft that even though I have met some of the greatest beings in the last century, but I just love him. And so you got to tell me, what was that like? Right off the bat.
Just to contextualize it first.
Yeah.
Dilgo Kyhentse Rinpoche was one of my teacher, Trungpa Rinpoche's main teachers. And there's a lot to tell about that relationship. It's a very significant relationship in terms of my community, the Shambhala community. So I would say Dilgo Kyhentse Rinpoche it would be like a grandfather to my community. He's like our father's father, our teacher's teacher. And at a certain point, after Trungpa Rinpoche had established, his Dharma teaching and the community in the West, I think it would be, in the mid 70s, he invited Kyhentse Rinpoche to come over. So we hosted his several visits of him coming here. And I was quite actively involved with those. So I spent time with him as part of the hosting crew and, as an attendant and kind of driving him around. And in fact, had some great stories to tell about him. But in general, a much bigger picture than me, he was an important lineage holder for our Sangha, for our community. and for others too. So he was kind of our nickname for him was Mr. Universe, because he was so big. First of all, he was physically huge. He was 6'7",
Mm.
and which is very unusual for Tibetan. He was like the size of. He would walk around. He was older, and he would walk around with one monk under each arm, like as crutches,
Mm.
and it was just quite a sight. He was just a massive. Physically, he had a really unusual physicality.
Mm.
And then I would say, he was coming as for those people who study closely with a Dharma teacher of some kind, if you're studying intimately, directly with one teacher, that teacher's going to really have a strong communication. And when they bring in other teachers, they're in a way there to kind of help support that activity, to give another image of what it looks like to have done a lot of practice and have kind of some level of realization. So Kyhentse Rinpoche's presence was almost completely, if not really completely, 100% benevolent. It was like, a sense of and I'll tell you one story from Trungpa Rinpoche. Trungpa Rinpoche was raised in a Kagyu monastery, which he was the head of in Tibet, and he had his root teachers, and he studied really hard, like the Tulkus do, from the age of 2. He was really, really very strictly trained. And at a certain point, he began to feel like, well, I don't know if this stuff is real or not. Talk about keeping it real. Like, is this real? And then Kyhentse Rinpoche came to his monastery, and he said, I knew it was all real at that point. I knew what this was all about. Just when he looked at him, which is when he saw him, which many people had that experience of Kyhentse Rinpoche and the 16th Karmapa both. This is like why Buddhism has survived for 2,500 years, because it actually can produce Buddhas. Those guys were Buddhas.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, and then, there was a lot of delight, a lot of lightness of being. I think you saw what incredible lightness of being looks like. There's tremendous compassion. He just was, in the same way that you guys talk about Maharaj-ji, being very affectionate to people and very open-hearted and, kind of grabbing people. And, he was just amazingly, I could cry right now just thinking about him. I think of him as like one of my main sort of images that I would hold in difficult times like these are.
Wow.
So I didn't know you were going to be asking me about that. That's funny.
No.
That's interesting.
Well, I wouldn't mind a little story, Dave, of just you and he and driving around anything for me.
Okay. So I was his driver in Northern California when he visited, and he stayed at his house in Berkeley. And this is kind of a unusual story, but I'm pretty sure it's true. I mean, sometimes it's so dreamlike around these kind of teachers, but I'm telling you something that, is at an ordinary level of what happened. We decided to take a drive into Marin County, which, if those of you know San Francisco, you go across the Golden Gate Bridge, right? And then you're up into Marin County, which is like Stinson Beach and further up and Bolinas, those kind of little beach towns. They're adorable little beach towns, and they still are to this day. And somehow we took him there with his translator, who was also another Rinpoche, and a couple of one or two other people. But we basically just took a drive up there. Yeah. Now we're walking out on Stinson Beach, which is a place I haunted sometimes, because probably you remember I had that band with Jerry Garcia, and so we'd go up there and rehearse and stuff like that. And there we were just out on the beach, and this is documented in the film Brilliant Moon, which is about Kyhentse Rinpoche. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Well, I'm in it.
Oh.
And we're on Stinson Beach. If you go back to the scene that's on Stinson Beach, that's me with long hair and a beard back then. And we're just walking down the beach with this giant Tibetan, gleaming, beautiful, radiant human being. And a kid just comes running up to us, and this is just, I guess maybe this is a sign of the times or something like that. These kind of things happen somehow magically. And he saw, well, this is a lama. This is an important lama. He could just saw that. And through the translator, he said that he had a teacher, and he had a protection cord, and those red cords that you wear around your neck. And he'd come to feel the teacher was not good, like not authentic, not wholesome, not benevolent for him. And he had a kind of negative feeling about it. But he was superstitious about taking the protection cord off. He didn't want to just kind of discard it. And Kyhentse Rinpoche they just took him totally in stride and said, okay, just give me the cord. And I don't know if I'm going to get through this story, Raghu. There's so much emotion tied up into it. He gave this giant hand the cord, and Kyhentse Rinpoche just blew on the cord like that. And he handed it back to him and said, no, go throw it in the ocean. And the kid went halfway out into the ocean, threw the cord in, and came back. And he just cleared that for him. And somehow there was enough confidence. There was not like, who was it? It was none of that stuff. He just felt it. He cleared it. It all happened the way it was supposed to. And there was a feeling, you'll see if you look at that piece in Brilliant Moon, you can see it's a happy bunch of people at the beach. And I'm wearing a suit. We wore suits in those days, to do the right thing. And on the way over we stopped on the other side of the lookout on Golden Gate Bridge. And this is very hard to talk about, because these are the sort of subtlest aspects of these teachers, is not what they say, but how they be. And he just took a kind of open pose against the backdrop of the bay there and the bridge, and he just showed me the quality of everything you and I have been looking for our whole lives. He just displayed it, and it's not something you can explain, but sometimes we call it the nature of mind in the Buddhist tradition, but powerful transmission. It wasn't saying or doing anything. So that was just one event, but in general, there was this tremendous feeling, benevolence, and kind of heart and space,
which I have gotten just from that film, from stuff I've seen on the net that people put out, and his pictures. Everybody, you got to go just put into Google Dilgo Kyhentse, Dilgo Kyhentse Rinpoche, and just check it out, because just one picture can do it. You can see it. We have good reference points, both of us. Yeah. But I don't think anybody would miss it.
Yeah, it's called liberation upon seeing in the traditional terms. Yeah. And Karmapa had that too. It's just you look at them and you go, okay, I get it. And that's what happened to Trungpa Rinpoche. He said, oh, this is what all these texts are about.
Yeah.
I get it. He's 9 years old,
Yeah, exactly. So I want to give everybody, so I have this wonderful book of his, and I'll just put it, it's called The Heart.
Show the picture. Hold the picture up.
The Heart Treasure of the Enlightened Ones.
There you go, folks.
There he is. And I keep this by my Getting Real mat, Sharon has talked about. And it's always there, and I just thumb any place in it. But he takes no. So through all of this that David has told us these wonderful stories, and you get the feeling of this incredibly compassionate, loving, magnanimous, spacious individual. But he took no prisoners in terms of his teachings. He was very, very blunt about it all. It's in this degenerate age that we have reached the peak of illusion, he says. People have long forgotten the purity of the golden age. They disregard their future lives and are preoccupied only by immediate gratification, unreliable and capricious. They bury the Dharma under a great heap of harmful and negative actions. The world and beings change direction every moment like stalks of wheat swaying to and fro in the wind. And what was true this morning is untrue by this evening. That's some timely. Untimely rain, snow, hail, heat, and cold upset the natural course of the seasons. Seeing all this, we must understand there is no point in being excessively glad when something good happens to us, as it may well turn into the opposite at any time. And we must understand that there is no point in being too depressed by bad circumstances, as our difficulties are minute compared to those endured by countless beings in the lower realms, just as a magician cannot be fooled by illusions that he knows he created himself. A bodhisattva who has realized the emptiness of all phenomena and who recognizes all worldly pursuits to be illusory, even if he lives as a householder, is not affected by negative emotions or ego clinging. Understanding the void nature of ordinary worldly activities, he is neither attracted to them nor afraid of them. He neither hopes for success nor fears failure. And he has such confidence in his study, contemplation, and practice that whatever he does brings him closer and closer to complete liberation. However, these days, such understanding is rare.
Yeah. Wow.
It's so great, huh? Oh,
well, and it's worth, Raghu, I teach a 100-hour meditation teacher training program. Teaching Connecticut here. I've taught it in Wilmington, New York. I'm teaching it in Tokyo, and I'm going to be teaching it in LA this year, starting in June. And I say, like, look, this is 100 hours of training, so you can go off and sort of join the mindfulness revolution and make a positive contribution. But how many of you would come if you had to fulfill my teacher's criteria, which was 15 years in a cave, which is what Kyhentse Rinpoche spent. 15 years in a cave. So, and then he re-entered, they call it entering the action. He re-entered the flow, and he came to Bhutan, and he apparently would just sit under a tree. He was a refugee, would sit under a tree in Bhutan, and people would just come around, and he would just teach anybody. And then the queen of Bhutan sort of took him in, and he became kind of like the royal Lama of Bhutan, which he still has that position. And he had quite a lot of students who were like Zongsar Kyhentse Rinpoche, and many other lamas have studied with him and would consider him their root guru, including the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama wouldn't consider him the root guru, but a very important teacher.
Yeah. So let's circle back to getting real here a little bit.
Yeah.
And
wow.
I did notice actually something that you wrote. It was called Cutting the Chains of Karma, How to Change Negative Habits in 5 Steps. It's really, really good because I had not, it's interesting, I had not read this before I put some notes together about what I wanted to talk to you about. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of getting real was the first thing in this article, recognition. I put getting real, recognizing false motives, paying yourself lip service, or paying lip service to the Dharma, basically, judgmental, habitual tendencies. We were way on the same page, Dave. Talk a little bit about recognition. I think because many people sit and do their practice, and they start with samatha and breathing and whatever they may do.
Right. Sure.
And that becomes the raison d'être, as they say in French, rather than the reason for being, the reason for doing meditation, rather than really getting at and uncovering the falseness that we live on a day-to-day. So yeah, to me, recognizing is very important.
This is a big current topic for me because I am participating in the mindfulness revolution in my own way by, working through that kind of modality in terms of corporations and things like that. And for sure, the people want the stability, focus, and clarity that comes from the focusing on the one-pointedness of mindfulness meditation.
Right.
And for sure, that's a result of that practice. And it's in all the texts, it talks about those three strengths: clarity, stability, and focus. Clarity, stability, and strength. So in other words, your mind is developing a certain resilience or strength of being able to come back into the moment. So that's a really good start. There's no problem with that as a foundation. In fact, without that foundation, the process of discovery, the process of cultivating virtue, the process of developing, even you could go up to the level of developing cities and things like that, without stability and without some kind of grounded quality, none of that really has a good base. But what is missing so far in the mindfulness realm, or that kind of movement, is the second tier, which you're so accurately pointing to, is discovery. So what I'm talking about mostly these days is that if you're going to really talk about mindfulness and awareness in a complete way, it's stability and discovery. Those are the two pieces of it. It's not just stability. It's not just discovery. And once the stability of being grounded on your cushion is there, you're going to look at yourself. The whole idea is to begin to study, understand your own mind and how it functions in productive ways, what its nature is, what the positive qualities of it are, what the inherent qualities of it are, and also what kind of sleazy habits we've developed over decades or lifetimes, however you want to look at it, which are based on avoiding oneself, avoiding reckoning with bad behavior and actions and negative patterns of speech, all those things. So
bullshitting ourselves right in there too.
And others, and
others, yeah.
And it's so easy for us with that momentum to come into a spiritual practice and just incorporate it into that process, which has been really well documented by Trungpa Rinpoche, cutting through spiritual materialism and spiritual bypassing and all those things. So even though there's no self, it's such a glib thing to say, in a sort of conventional point of view, a lot of the notions of who we are based on kind of false ideas about who we are. There's still some individual aspect to existence, and we're accountable. So in the teacher training program, I say the most important thing is self-assessing. The final frontier is self-deception of any spiritual path. You can fall in love with the teacher. You can fall in love with the teachings. You can talk a great game. You can write 1 million books. But at the end of the day, if you're not really going to the core of your own obstacles and self-deception, you're going to, sooner or later, it's going to show up in ways that you hadn't planned on.
Yeah, exactly.
If your lineage is good, they'll show up as protectors and they'll say, you got to deal with this now.
Yeah. And you'll get this stuff shoved in your face by your inner guru, outer guru, teacher, whatever you want to call it. It's going to happen.
And don't forget the Sangha.
And the Sangha, right.
And your husband and wife.
Yeah.
Your boyfriend and girlfriend. So we talk about in Shambhala, we say cosmic mirror. There's a mirror principle that the teacher represents more than any kind of deliberate manipulation. It's reflective. And but if you take that on and you go, we talk about honesty and humbleness and kind of softness and friendliness, gentleness. So it's hard to take that on. It's hard to see that way into yourself. It's painful.
Yeah.
It's challenging.
Yeah. And I think we should include here changing habits, which is one of the other things. And I talked about habitual patterns. I mean, this is extraordinarily a difficult aspect of our day-to-day lives. I mean, so difficult. And we're going to talk a little bit about karma as we go on here. But habitual patterns in the addressing of them in terms of our getting real premise, and how do we attack them? How do we approach them rather than attack them?
Well, the word attack is probably not going to work for most of us.
Yeah. Well, you can see where I'm lost. I'm going to attack that motherfucker. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that could be a habitual pattern.
That is one. Right. I'm like Larry David, his sidekick Leon. Go and get that motherfucker. We're just going to get it, Larry. Get it right up in it.
I'm on a Curb Your Enthusiasm binge the last couple of days.
Oh my God.
I love that show, man. Because it's so unabashed,
Yeah, right.
So incorrect.
Yeah.
So habits are, again, there's a number of ways of talking about these. Where are they is an interesting thing to contemplate right away. Where are the habits? What would you say?
Where are the habits?
Yeah.
They, in my experience, they exist in the deepest recesses of my molecular and DNA structure that I can recognize whenever they flow out. One thing that practice has done, and particularly meditation over the many years, is I've gotten good at maybe not fooling myself quite the same way that I used to, and I see these demons as they approach, and I recognize the starting points from which they came, and it could be deep in the past or not so far, but mostly deep in the past, because they're resoundingly familiar on a day-to-day basis. So, yeah.
Well, so for example, there's a lot of interesting things in what you just said. There's the emanation point, where's the cave, and when do they come to the mouth of the cave and come out of the cave? Yeah. And the notion of time, because I would suggest it's impossible that they're in the past. They can't be in the past. From that point of view, there is no past. They're existing now, somewhere. Otherwise, you couldn't experience it. And even if the memory appears to refer to a past event, it's still happening. It's triggering in the moment.
Yeah.
So,
but I do think it lives as a root, and that's present now. But it is
so
easily
where are they now? Then where are they now?
Well, they're thoughts. They're just all thoughts.
Okay.
Huh?
So I'm gonna again try to elaborate on that a little bit. Yes, they exist as thoughts or in the realm of mind. They also exist at the physical level, embodied level, like even somebody who's like been abused and they sit there like this, that's not a thought anymore. That's a body. And they exist in the emotional body, or these are called the body, speech, and mind, or three kayas, Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, Dharmakaya. So to uproot that, you have to go into all three levels of your existence. Sometimes it means doing body work. Sometimes it means doing energy work. And sometimes it's in the mind realm. And usually all three. So it depends how deeply rooted it is. I mean, and that's why it's so hard to break. That's where addictions come from. They're so deeply rooted in the body level. I'm trying to kick sugar lately. And I don't know if you heard this, but sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. Did you know that?
No, but I totally understand it. I didn't know that, but
and if anybody out there wants to understand habits, 95% of you are addicted to sugar, and will, just by trying not to have sugar, you'll understand everything about habits by encountering the space in which the habit arises, the craving arises, but the grasping is cut. So in Buddhism, we say if you want to cut karma, that's where you cut. Let the craving come up, see it, don't activate it, whether it's for aggression, you want to yell at somebody, you want to hit somebody, you want to make love to somebody, you want to eat something, don't do it. And just let the craving, bring the recognition to the craving. And now you have to do that a lot of times, because it's going to come up there's a lot of seeds planted. So you have to be steady and vigilant if you want to break habits.
Yeah.
But the key element is recognition or awareness. And I guess the second element is some kind of will.
Right.
Some kind
of intention. That gets us into a really high wire act around will, especially for us in the West. And, right effort is a whole other, part of the Eightfold Path. It's funny, you just said, what you just said just triggered something in me, that we were sitting with Maharaj-ji Neem Karoli Baba, and somebody asked about what to do with desires. And so it was a cup of tea. He said, "You see this cup of tea? You want this tea? Don't drink it. Period."
Well, that's, of course, renunciation in its most primitive and primordial way. You just don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Well, and
Now,
that's what he told Ram Dass, you're angry. He didn't go into a whole thing about,
mhm.
moving with it and making
Yeah,
friends with it or anything.
yeah.
Give it up. Give it up.
Yeah, and that's
Coming from the
kind of a
from the non dual, really, which
well.
is.
We in Buddhism we would call that basic Hinayana teaching.
Hmm.
That's a basic renunciation. Like the monks take 250 vows. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to have kind of neurotic sexual activity. Man, forget about it. Like you're signing your life away. And of course, in the other yanas of Buddhist teachings, there's other ways to work with kleshas as they arise, and probably there is a kind of sophisticated way to transform them on the spot, but it's a lot easier to say than to do.
Yeah. Oh, we should talk about that Yiddish word that you just
Klesha?
mentioned. Yeah, it's a nice Yiddish word, klesha. Right? And I like your I don't know where I saw it, but your interpretation, neurotic upheaval. Obscurations, of course, is the more classic, but neurotic upheaval. I think many of us could relate.
I think that's right from Trungpa Rinpoche.
Oh yeah,
neurotic upheaval. Yeah, he was a linguistic
yeah.
genius that way.
Yeah,
yeah. So klesha, obviously, is such an interesting idea that there's something blocking our basic goodness, our natural intelligence. There's some kind of obstacles, and here's basically and again, I'm very classically trained in Buddhism in a way, so like I like the straight answers. They say that there's two veils. Talk about reality. There's two veils between you and reality that have to be lifted for you to experience reality properly. So one is called conflicting emotions, which is kleshas. It's energy of emotions, but that's not harmonized, not synchronized. You're working against yourself. You're jealous and you're angry at yourself for being jealous. It's a mountain of kind of conflicting energies in the emotional realm.
Which, by the way, it's absolutely key. Everybody listening here, this has got to be one of the most intrinsic things for us to be aware of and transform. Just exactly that, the conflicting emotion and the building of on top, one thing on top of the other to make it very difficult to be free of.
Yeah, it's kind of a fortress of shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You think you're being defended by it. That's the big talk about, not seeing it clearly. This is making me safe. This is making me great.
And this is what I'm used to as well.
Well, yeah, but you don't even have that level of insight about it. You just feel like this is making me powerful and defended. Mm-hmm. So everybody knows that, and I guess in Western terms, you could call it defense mechanisms and things like that. The other veil, so you lift that veil by seeing that as it is and kind of removing those filters. The other veil is called primitive beliefs about reality, which is a very interesting one. There are two primitive beliefs about reality. One is called nihilism, and one's called eternalism. So you and I and me and KD, we've had this conversation going on in Maui for probably years at this point, because some people see the Buddhists as nihilistic, and some people might see the Bhaktis as eternalists. Mm-hmm. And the middle way is that you kind of leave the coin on its edge, which is the kind of non-dual or integrated approach. You don't solidify a sense of voidness or negative expanse, and you don't try to make eternity into some sort of like fixed thing that you can then say I'm comfortable, I'm secure.
Right, heaven will.
Yeah. So those are the talk about getting real. Those two things they say is what that's between you and real.
Right. I'm going to refer back here to Kyhentse Rinpoche. In past lives and in this life until now, we have brought harm to others countless times by lying to them, cheating them, stealing from them, bringing ruin upon them, assaulting them, killing them, and all kinds of other wrongdoing. This accumulated negativity is what has kept us trapped in illusion, samsara, and it is now the chief hindrance to our progress on the path. It sustains the two kinds of obscuration, which we were just talking about, which fall between us and the experience of the Buddha nature. Obscuration by emotions and obscuration of what can be known. But then he says, our situation is not completely hopeless, however. We might have, after what you just said, we thought so.
Right.
As the Kadampa masters used to say, the only good thing about wrongdoing is that it can be purified. Negative actions are compounded phenomena, so they must be impermanent. Therefore, as the Buddha said, there can be no fault so serious that it cannot be purified by the four powers. And there's a long treatise around the four powers. But that just brings up to talk a little bit about, because one of the other things we've been talking to our friends about is getting at the wisdom of karma that we can. And, you know, I know your book, Awakening from the Daydream, has so much richness in it addressing this subject. But karma, Robert Svoboda, do you know who Robert is?
Yes.
Robert wrote, the Agora books. And so he talked about karma, according to Krishna, karma is the Lord himself, you know. So that we had this wonderful conversation about it, and I have been talking and trying to get a way in which we can enter into not just the classical understanding of cause and effect and so on, and more about really recognizing the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, that the subtle levels of our actions and what these actions and how they can really come back. They do come back and haunt us. And actions affect, this is actually from Joseph Goldstein, I believe. Actions affect both doers and those around them in unimaginable ways. And the seeds of karma shape our lives and our worlds through, though different Buddhist traditions give different weight to whether the action is willed or not. And we talked about that's a toughie, yeah. In either case, through mindfulness, we become aware of the nature of these actions and, in fact, can change our karma. So talk a little bit about it from your point of view.
Yeah, I mean, in a certain point, I think it's pretty easy to recognize karma as the whole game. Because if you posit the idea, which almost everybody does, that there's some kind of fundamental goodness and fundamental lightness of being and fundamental pure, in the Buddhist tantric tradition, they call it kadak, or fundamental purity. And that's the basis of the Dzogchen or Ati teachings, is that there never was a problem, there's never going to be a problem, there isn't a problem. That the intrinsic reality is completely pure from beginningless time. And that's really a profound view. You can say that, but then you better be prepared to to take on all comers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So short of that view, which is, a really deep kind of profound view, the more relative view is that, sure, that's true. And now it's also true that at a relative level, we've created all kinds of double backs, double takes, wraparounds, twists, hallucinations, bad actions, mistakes, all at the relative level that need to be cleaned up. There's no way you can just leave that mess on the field and expect to have a happy life. I mean, so you begin to say, okay, how do I clean this up? And the simplest level is, Kyhentse Rinpoche that's just so astoundingly pure Dharma to me, the way he's talking. That's really Buddha Dharma. Like, that's straight from the Buddha. That's really like what the Buddha said. That's really very pure. And, you look and you say, well, let's say you are used to lying. Let's just say, some of us have learned how to lie to avoid the truth and to avoid the pain of certain types of experience. And there's big lies and there's little lies. And, at a certain point, like I have a chapter in the new book I'm writing called "Lying, Cheating, and Stealing Are Not Good for You or Anybody Else." They don't create the benefit that you hope for. And now, does that mean you should blurt out to everybody, I saw your, that you have huge underwear, or you eat like a slob or something like that? No, that's not what it means. But some kind of accountability for using speech and recognizing the sacredness of speech to express really clearly, without obfuscation, what it is you're trying to say to somebody. Without a game, without manipulation, just to really use it as an opportunity to communicate.
Right.
So when you go back through those same channels and try to put some kind of honesty into them, or naivete, almost simplicity, I think they clean out. And then you have to look, as you said, some of these things feel like they emanate from the past. So sometimes you have to go to the past and apologize to somebody if you treated them badly or lied to them, and clean it up, because you may have created ripples, that you need to take responsibility for.
Yeah. And this is from Robert: karma being so intricate, decent theories of karma are as difficult to objectively prove or disprove as is the theory of quantum mechanics. One practical difficulty with testing either theory is that cause and effect is only rarely linear. I love this. One cause sometimes produce one effect, but far more commonly, a number of cooperating concomitant causes are needed to produce a single effect, and a distant cause quickly spirals into a cascade of interconnected effects. And that's just really getting at the subtlety of what we create, and having an awareness about that is supreme. And I like what you say, talking about honesty with yourself too.
And that's why in the New Age world they say, "Oh, you have cancer, so you must have had, negative causes and effects." But they say only a Buddha can see all the causes and effects, that level of sight and vision. So we don't know. We don't know what caused somebody to be born in a war zone, or to somebody to have a very abusive or difficult life. So that's why our job, as far as I see it, is not to analyze the karma in a situation, but just to add compassion. That's all.
Yeah, big
just
deal.
Whatever it is, however it got there, your job is not to flip the blame on that person, but to figure out what you can do, if anything, to be helpful.
And there's myriad ways in which we do this to ourselves too. I mean, talk about blame and guilt. So compassion is a great component. There's one last thing I want you to comment on, and it's also from Dilgo Khyentse. The more I read of Dilgo Khyentse, I mean, it's sort of like falling in love.
Yeah, man.
Impulse is the compulsion to take action on the basis of your feelings of desire and aversion. It's all that one line is enough. Thus accumulating karma. Impulse is the compulsion to take action on the basis of your feelings of desire and aversion, thus accumulating karma. Impulse is therefore the architect of samsara and nirvana. Completely enslaved by impulse, you have been wandering from one life to the next since beginningless time. Yet if you realize that the nature of impulse is void, and that your endless impulses are in truth the myriad facets of wisdom, you will no longer be subject to their domination.
Gee, well, look, who translated that book?
I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to find out, and then I'll let you know. All right.
Okay, because they did a good job.
Translator's preface. Okay, but he didn't say his name. Isn't that terrible? I'd have to read a little bit further in to figure that out, but I'll find it out.
Post it and give credit where credit's due, because that's English, I'm teaching a lot in Japan, and it's not easy to translate this stuff into another language.
Yeah.
A lot of misunderstanding. Like the first word they used in English for klesha was defilements. It's so Christian, Yeah, right. You're defiled. I mean, it's not sin. We don't really believe in that kind of approach. So, but that's a really good translation, whoever did that.
Yeah, but impulse
Yeah, man. I wonder what the word in Tibetan for impulse is. Because Kyhentse Rinpoche didn't speak English, unlike Trungpa Rinpoche, who wrote in English.
Yeah.
He made his own translation. So, yeah, impulse. It makes you want to quit. Good dharma should make you want to quit. And then you realize you can't even kill yourself. That's not even possible, actually. Trungpa Rinpoche used to say you can't even commit suicide. You can't get out of it. You can't. There's no escape. Like Pema, wisdom of no escape.
Yeah.
We have to address it because it's built that way. So that's an interesting idea. You could take all the drugs in the world. You could kill yourself 1,000,000 times. You could become a mass murderer. You cannot escape the prison of your own mind. These guys nail you to it, man. They have diamond nails and they nail you to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but I think everybody can relate on the most in the most practical way, that when we circle all the way back to getting real, or Sharon's getting real, that the impulse, the compulsion to take action, that, I mean, we sit with that, recognize that. Talk about how we came together, you and I, without knowing it, around recognition. The recognition of that impulse and the compulsion, I think, is one of the most powerful ways in which we fool ourselves, by not recognizing that within us, that just constantly is acting out on desires and aversions.
And that's the original definition of mindfulness, by the way.
Oh.
It's smrti in Sanskrit, which is recognition, like sort of recognizing. And it's also a key to a very kind of simple but high level practice. You just recognize the natural state, and you also recognize what is arising, and then you don't hold on to it. You just let go.
Yeah. That's worth another 40 podcasts, the letting go process, right?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Well.
And I just have one thing left to say about Sharon. I have to say it.
Yeah.
I think you didn't let her finish. She said, get real happiness. Get real love. She was just doing an ad for her book.
I see. Yes. Yes. No,
I said,
right? you got, no, it's the next book, Getting Real. You've had real love, real happiness. Now just plain old Getting Real, Sharon.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Hey,
if she
from
does
from your mouth to her publisher's ear.
Yeah. Right.
That's not a bad title at all, by the way.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. But I'm just kidding, of course, because, I think I know what she was getting at, but she has used that phrase, get real happiness, real love, right? Am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And in this case, she knew who she was talking to, with our friend Duncan Trussell, who can go into, extraordinary, fantastical states of skeptic paranoia, shall we say.
Yeah.
And although a lot of that these days, even he will admit, is a little bit of a put on to engage that character he's created, because things, things have changed for him over the years. They really have, and he's admitted that.
If you're in show business, you're only as good as your last hit, and a lot of people get caught up trying to reproduce it.
Yeah, so he's got to be very So so she knew who she was dealing with, though. There was a core thing, where he.
Sure.
It's exactly what he needed to hear, and it is exactly what I would say many of us listening, and many of us out there, and many people coming to your teacher trainings need to hear the practicality of dealing and recognizing with those places in ourselves that are those obscurations are. So.
The image is of Duncan in a helicopter, and it's trying to take off, and Sharon's just putting her foot down on the landing pad, and just so you can't take off.
Right.
And we talk a lot about Buddha always is touching the earth, coming down. So a lot of people don't see spirituality that way. They're trying to ascend, to some level.
Exactly that. Yeah. That's a
wonderful.
Great. Thank you so much. Mr. Nichtern, Mr.
My
Nuji.
pleasure.
So great to be with you, as I say. Thank God I'm doing these mind-rolling podcasts so I can get to hang out with you and
Yeah.
Sharon and Joseph and all of our friends. It's just a joy. It really is. So,
And it's great to talk to you. You've really gotten to be very good at this exchange.
well, thank you.
It's like you're refining the process of having this kind of dialogue, and it's really super important for people.
Yeah, no, it's because it's easy for people to just put on the headphones and take a run or weed the garden, and you got it right there. Or some people say, "Wow, yeah, I listen at night and I'm asleep within 2 minutes. It's fantastic." So I'm thinking of doing a sleep podcast.
Right.
This is
Wow.
for if you want to go to sleep. Listen
Well,
to me.
How about the title of your next book, Wakeful Napping?
Yeah.
You could go for it.
Yeah, my first book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Dave.
Great.
Have a
Thank you
great
so
trip. Have a
Okay,
great
thank you. You
trip,
too.
and I'm
Yeah.
going to look forward to seeing you in Maui in May.
Yep.
And again, thank you for being here on Mindrolling. Go to BeHereNowNetwork.com, and all of Dave's book will be there. You can link to it, and his website, and Dilgo Kyhentse Rinpoche will have his books and a link to what's the name of the movie, Dave?
Brilliant Moon.
Yeah.
Which is his Dharma name in English.
Really.
And if you see the scene on the beach, the guy in the suit with the beard and the long hair is me.
Yeah, I bought it. I'm going to go look at that. Yeah, I got to see that.
Okay.
All right.
But that's not why
Yeah,
you'll
no,
see when you see the movie why both of us are in love with him. It's
really.
It's really good. Thank you for reminding me about him.
Oh, absolutely. A joy.
Good job. Yeah.
Thanks. See you everybody next week on Mindrolling.